Welcome. It's May 14th, 2024. I'm Joe Weston, and we're here for our monthly Global Heart Gathering. For those of you who come on a regular basis, you can see either I've done a complete makeover to my apartment or I am not where I live. And the second is true. I am currently in Milan, Italy, and talking with you from my hotel room. And it's wonderful to see familiar faces, and I'm really, really moved by seeing some new faces who are joining us, people I've known for years who are doing remarkable work around the world and in their own fields. And as you know, we gather on a monthly basis to hold space with each other, to cultivate a practice of what I call fierce compassion and resilience. And many of us have been gathering now for over 5 years, actually coming up to 6 years around the world, creating this community where we get to practice, we get to reflect, and we get to hold space with one another. And as I say, that there are many reasons for doing this. One of them is this idea of seeing what's happening in the world and holding, if you come to these sessions, then you have, and somewhere in your heart, are busy with what's unfolding on this planet, feeling that in many different ways and experiencing that. And as I say, the way we see this is that we recognize that we are in a moment, a very unique moment, a sacred moment in our world, human history, where we're seeing the old crumbling and the new emerging. And that we see ourselves as midwives in that process, midwiving the dying process of what's dying away, and midwiving, holding space for what's emerging. And that sometimes it's hard to see what's emerging if we're too caught up in the chaos of what is falling away. But why I use the image of a midwife is that they are both loving and nurturing, and they are fierce. And this practice, along with the practice of fierce ability, is in essence training ourselves to let go of the deep primal instinct to be a fighter and defender, and cultivate what's in our true nature to be nurturers and protectors. And imagine a world of people who have been able to overcome that initial instinct to fight and defend, and have really trained themselves and opened to a deeper level of their own a connection with their own highest values or spiritual values, to be a nurturer and protector, not only for loved ones, but also for strangers and even maybe for adversaries. And in essence, we gather, and there are people who gather on the Zoom session with us. There are people who hold space along with us around the world. And the way we really usually do this is that I start with giving my reflections on how I see what's happening as a way of setting the motivation. We do our practice, and then we have time to reflect. And today I wanted to talk about, it might be a tricky subject, but I am noticing that it's getting harder and harder not to talk about and get engaged with what's currently unfolding with the level of polarization that continues, and now particularly around the issues around Gaza and Israel, and tracking what's happening not only in the United States and North America, but in Europe and the Middle East, with my connections in both Europe and the Middle East, and seeing that there is an acceleration of polarization. There is an acceleration of, and the basis of that is, as I've always said, that with more uncertainty, it creates more anxiety. And with more anxiety, if we are not doing our practices, we tend to fall into patterns where we get stuck in our fight, flight, freeze responses. And as I often say, that either we're in the fight response where we want to fight the system and see if we can tear it down. And unfortunately, just fighting the system just strengthens the system. Or we get stuck in a flight response where we try to go back to a time that was great again, or a time that felt safe and good for us, certain people, for ourselves. But the most people I find are stuck in a freeze response. These are people who feel like they want to do something. They want to make a difference. They want to see how they can be part of an unfolding of this glorious emergence of the human spirit that is already happening. Just hard to see because the media doesn't find that sexy. But this is emerging and we want to be of service, but we're in a freeze response because we don't know what to do. And oftentimes the reason we don't know what to do is because we see what's happening where the extremes on all sides of the politics or the issues get the loudest voice. And in a sense, the loudest voices get the most attention. And that's always been my challenge. How can I share in these discussions without adding to the noise? And then I find that the quietest voices are the ones that are, if they're truly coming from our core and our heart, are the ones that will pierce through the confusion and the noise and be heard. It just takes more patience and time. So here we are in this time where we're in this fight, flight, freeze response. And if you remember, just after October 7th, with the horrific events that happened there in the Middle East, in Israel, and then in Gaza, that I used Hamlet as an example of how many of us were, that this idea that Hamlet came from a very tribal Denmark. He then went to Germany and experienced the Enlightenment. In essence, he went from being a tribal person, where it's basically every person for its revenge, an eye for an eye, and suddenly was experienced the humanist movement, humanism, and an enlightened way of seeing human beings and shifting the way human beings were seeing themselves in the universe. And then went back to Denmark and was expected by his father's ghost to avenge him. And his dilemma wasn't so much that he had doubts or that he was having an Oedipal complex, as many people would say. I believe his dilemma was he understood what his task was from a tribal perspective. He had to avenge his father's death, but now with this new sense of being enlightened, saw that that might not be the best solution. And unfortunately, because he was the only one who experienced that enlightened view of the world, he was pulled back into enculturation. He was pulled back into tribalism. And I made it clear in October, about a month or about less than a month after what was happening, that I was finding a lot of people who I would say know better, who advocate for world peace, who advocate for love and compassion, who say we are all one, who may even believe that that is true, were being drawn back into very tribal things of us and them, and good and bad. And that was my concern. And a lot of what we've been talking about since has been about that. And I want to just say that what I'm seeing, that there's people are asking me a lot, Joe, what are your views about what's happening in Israel, Gaza? What are your views that are happening with the protests and with young people protesting and how that's going? And it's very hard for me to give an answer that's not very nuanced. The first thing I always say when people, because I have spent a number of years in the Middle East, working with in various countries around the Middle East, specifically in the Palestinian territories and in Israel. And I've studied the region. I've studied the wars that have been going on for centuries. And what I start with, that I always say, is that the more I learn about the region, the more I recognize that I will never understand the complexities of that region. And I wish more of us would hold on to that, I would say, humble view, because what I'm seeing with a lot of people who are, I think it's great that people are protesting and people have a vision and people want to see change, that unfortunately they're holding on to very rigid polarities of good and bad, right and wrong, win and lose. And for those of you who know me, and I talk about this often with the fierce civility work, we're not going to see the end of polarization around us until we first address our own internal polarizations. And three of the polarizations that we hold on to, even if we know better, even if intellectually we'll say, oh yeah, I get that that's not true. And that's a lot of, right? Many of you know I talk about skills-based learning. It's not enough to just have the information. People have gathered so much information. And if just gathering information were going to solve our world problems, we would have already solved our world problems. We have to go through what, for me, the way I've learned it is, and the way I teach it is skills-based learning is you begin with information, then you take it into your heart and you contemplate it, you personalize it, you question its validity. You understand the consequences of that information. You build relationship with it. Then once you've contemplated and built relationship with the information, you bring it into your core and your body and you try it out. And it usually never goes well the first time you do it, but in the not going well, you learn more information, which brings you back here. You contemplate in a deeper level. You try it again with more experience and wisdom. And when you do that a few million times, you've just rewired your neural pathways. You gain new muscle memory and you've learned a skill where it's no longer just an idea, you take it into action. And part of what we do on a monthly basis is we do the same practice so that we get that wiring going so that it becomes second nature. So that we move through the world with a heart that is fierce with compassion and that is resilient and has space to feel the suffering of all beings on this planet. Let's just stick with human beings and not just with those that ally with us, but all human beings. That is the solution. It sounds really simple as a solution, but just think of it. If more of us did that, where not just the idea of we are all one, but we're actually living it moment to moment, then the world would instantly change. The solutions are here in our intellect. We've got to put them into practice. So I bring this back to this idea of what I'm finding unfortunate is that we're seeing a lot of people who are passionate and really set on fire to want to alleviate the suffering of others. And as you know, with my work, I clearly say it's not about the what, it's about the how. I can't tell you what you believe. I can't tell you what you should say and what you could advocate for. What I can do is maybe help you become aware that the way you're doing it, the how, might not be as beneficial or efficient as it could be, which is a shame because then what you want to advocate for is not being realized. And I speak for myself, I speak for many people. But the issue we're seeing, I think, is this. And part of this is that we're stuck in this idea that there has to be a good guy in the story and a bad guy. And maybe we should consider that there are no good guys or bad guys. They're just people who are just trying to survive. That there's no winner or loser in this. That's the complexity of the issue, certainly with Israel Gaza. There's no winner, or there can't be a winner or a loser. If there could have been, that would have happened already. Everyone either wins or everyone loses. That's the paradigm of our time. That's it. For some of you might say that's the Aquarian age. That's the whole point of our time. Either everyone wins or everyone loses. There can't be winners and losers anymore. That's the old paradigm. That's dying away. What's the other one? Oh, and that we hold on to this idea that we believe what our viewpoints are right, are true, and that if someone else has a different viewpoint, they must be wrong. And I'm finding that that's a lot of what's causing a lot of confusion with the current issue, particularly around Israel and Gaza and world issues, is that we know it intellectually that there's a difference between a fact and an opinion. And yet we are functioning from a very tribal way to think in many ways that our opinions are facts. And I want to do a little experiment with you. I made a list of statements, and you can unmute if you want. I mean, it's a game. But I'd like you to just go through the process, feel this in your body. And I'd like you to just very quickly, when I say something, just what's your first response? Is it a fact or is it an opinion? Viewpoint. You ready? Yeah. Is this a fact or an opinion? almost 1,200 people were killed, slaughtered, mutilated, and raped in Israel on October 7th.
Fact.
It's a fact, at least in terms of, all of this is based on the information we have, right? Who knows if it's true, but based on the information we have, that's a fact. Is it a fact or is it an opinion? 35,000 people have died in Gaza. Gazans have died since October 7th. Is it a fact or is it
An opinion? It's an opinion. There's a lot of changes in those numbers, and it depends who's counting.
It's a fact, but it may or may not be true.
Okay, but how many people would you say? Do you think anyone has died in Gaza since October 7th?
Yes.
How many would you say, Lou, approximately?
I don't know. I just was reading articles yesterday on the news that were saying they had completely miscounted, and it was about half the numbers that originally had been reported on stuff. And I'm not like up to speed 100%, but I think I think there's still opinions involved in all of this reporting. And I do believe there's a death. I do believe people are dying, but I can't figure out how many and really whose side is getting how many.
Okay. Thank you. But
I appreciated you distinguishing a fact from whether or not it's true.
yeah. No, I mean, I just want us to but to just say people, any number of people have died in Gaza, is that an opinion or is it a fact?
That's the fact.
Right. Okay. Again, whether it's fact or true, we don't know. 14,790 people have died in Sudan since April 15th. Since April 15th.
That's a fact.
That's
May
a
or
fact.
may not be true.
May or may not be true, right? I have a right to protect what's mine at all costs. Is that a fact or is it an opinion?
It's an opinion.
Opinion.
9 million people per year die of hunger. Fact
fact.
or fact? Genocide is bad.
Opinion.
Yes, it's right. Yes.
Opinion, yeah. A bomb landing on a house kills people.
If
Maybe.
there's people in it.
Maybe not.
There's people in it. And there are people in it.
Maybe it didn't go off.
Yeah.
A bomb that goes off in a house, bombs kill
With people in it.
Okay, this is good. Starvation kills people.
Yes.
Yes, fact.
Uh,
I would say starvation can kill people.
Yeah, I would too.
okay. Oh, I love this. Israelis are committing a genocide.
Opinion.
What did you say?
Israelis are committing genocide.
I think that's an opinion.
It is. I would say so. A government cannot be a terrorist.
That's an opinion.
That's an opinion.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had others, but I just wanted to bring that up is that what I think is happening is that we're losing perspective on what we're establishing as facts and what we're establishing as opinion. And on top of that, as you've established, when we look at the facts we have, whether they're true or not. And yet, what I'm seeing again is that people are having a response, they're collecting some data. And again, with this idea that for me, having studied the region and actually, also growing up in a Jewish family in New York and understanding what it means to be Jewish as an American, then going to the Netherlands and actually having conversations with Jewish people who were in concentration camps, and then going to the Soviet Union where Jews were persecuted, and then being in Israel, I've had an interesting worldview of what it means to be Jewish in the world, as well as working with a lot of Palestinians, but mostly women's rights organizations. And my conclusion continues to be that it's almost impossible to fully understand. And therefore, for me, I would never make any blanket statements about what's right or wrong in that region. What I can hold on to is a very basic thing for me, is that I do everything I can to avoid harming others. I do everything I can to alleviate the suffering of others. I do everything I can to try to see if I can bring more happiness to others. As I often say, the definitions of love and compassion in Buddhism is that love is the desire to make others happy and acting on that desire. And compassion is the desire to alleviate the suffering of others and acting on that desire. And that's my North Star. That's my focal point. And I try every day, knowing that as a human being, I'm going to harm people. It is impossible, I think, for any human being not to harm one another. And I often say that what I can do is to make sure that I minimize that harm. And if I do harm someone, as quickly as possible to try to seek repair, is to repair it. And so from
May I say something at
Sure.
this moment?
Yeah.
I find from going to the synagogue and going to the mosque here in town and participating in both of those worlds a little bit, and from my own historical research, that none of these faiths talk about killing anybody. And it's like what you just said about trying to be loving in every situation is the point of so many. And I hear the Jewish community here in town talking about messages of love. So I'm not sure why there's so much killing going on. It just doesn't make sense. It's a real oxymoron to me.
And that's why we gather. We're trying to unravel that. We're trying to hold space for that. I can go on with many ideas about why I think that is. And as I always say, it has to do with the level of uncertainty and fear and pain. And there's plenty more. If I have a whole chapter on that in my book on looking at what the dysregulation that people are in. And the systems that want to keep things the way they are really good at keeping us dysregulated.
Right.
That's really and it takes a lot of work and practice to work within ourselves to find our own balance and to connect back into our personal power and our hearts and our highest values. And more importantly, to seek connection with others. That is a big issue that we're seeing. The more isolated we are and disconnected we are, it just increases that sense of lack of empathy and compassion for others. So I'm happy that there are communities that are getting together. I think the media plays a part in that. It's not sexy for them to go to a mosque or a synagogue or a church and see a bunch of people being loving and talking about love. So I'm saying something quickly, but I just wanted to bring that in, that what can we do for ourselves to check in with ourselves? First of all, I want to say Dr. Janet, who is an expert on words and the power of words. We've had many conversations. She says in the chat, we created words. Words separate, divide, and categorize. Yes, and that's our biggest challenges now, is that this illusion of separation, that we can't, and that's what I'm saying, is that there's a discrepancy between our thoughts and our actions. We can't say we're all one and still act as if we're separate. Either we're all one or we're separate. And on a larger scale, as we talk about, we are interconnected, we are interdependent. And the sooner more of us can realize that and live from that place, that every thought, word, and action we have is going to ripple out and have an impact around the world, that's where we're going to see change. So I'm saying things you already know, and I've said this a lot, but I wanted to just bring this in terms of what are we doing and continuing in our practice to move into this place of upping our game in terms of connecting in and overcoming the parts of us that are still believing where we are separate and how we step into that. So I'd like to Antanas, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. It's a little back to what you were talking about, I mean, I feel like it's all about power. So much of life is about managing our power. And if we feel not empowered, then our thinking gets blurry, and then opinions start melting into solidifying as facts.
Right.
Because they're motivated by our disempowerment or my disempowerment. And I want to have a sense of control, or a sense of, like mitigating or neutralizing the fight or flight thing that often is deeply at play, deeply and unconsciously at play, and continually nurtured or triggered, with the food system, with the news system, with the medicine system. Like, everything is about keeping people disempowered. And, the sense of self that you're pointing to, the sense of serenity is my word, but just a presence allows us to feel ourselves in our bodies. And that's where power can come from.
Yep. Thank you. And you're sharing your truth in that. And I love that. And I know you. I know that's very important for you. That resonates from who you are. And I've been saying that now since the pandemic. If in a situation, in a world that's with so much uncertainty, where do we find our certainty? Where can we find our power and control? And that is we can where we always have power is in keeping our nervous systems regulated, if we choose to, in cultivating resilience. We always have power in how we respond to the stressors around us. We may not have power over the stressors around us. And we always have power to cultivate and deepen relationship and to connect with more. So I want to take.
Can I throw something else, one more thing in here?
Sure.
I think it also has to do with access to resources. I think the media and history shows us that it's when people start fighting the most is when they think they don't have enough.
Yeah.
Or they're going to lose something that they think they need to survive. And rather than being more willing to share, they pull their fists in instead of letting things out. And that's just my thought.
Well, yes, and it's good. It's a question of clarifying where are people hurting, where are people in pain, where are people suffering, and what we're cultivating here is stepping into this notion that there are already so many people and organizations around the world that get this and are working towards this idea of sharing, this idea of community as leader. This idea of interdependence and interconnectedness, and this idea that I believe strongly is that we have to let go of this idea of winners and losers. That we, in a sense, that as we move into this, we're all going to win. And maybe our minds right now cannot grasp that and understand that. But we don't have to. Maybe it hasn't unfolded yet or emerged yet. We're in the emergence. So I'd like to take us into a practice. I enjoyed the discussion. Check in and notice if you're activated by this. And it's a beautiful thing to take into the practice. So as many of you know, in this practice, there's no right way to do this or wrong way to do it. It's about finding your way. And what we're here to do, as always, is cultivate fierce compassion and resilience. And the definition of resilience that we usually go with is cultivating within ourselves presence, awareness, balance, and flow. So I invite you to sit in a way where your spine is straight without being rigid. Allow balance and flow to move through you. Relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your belly. We call power sit, and bringing your attention now into your lower belly, to your core. And the way we find that is that it's approximately the width of 3 fingers below your navel and 1/3 of the way into the body from the front of the body. So bringing your attention now into that spot. Your center of impulse, creativity, gut wisdom, personal power. And awareness. And from your center, become aware of your contact points, the parts of your body that are connected with what you're sitting on and the ground. Feeling the parts of your body that are feeling the sensations of pressing down into the stability under you. Trusting that stability. The more you can trust the stability under you, the more you can allow yourself to be held. Imagining that the floor and the chair that you're sitting on is a representation of what takes you even deeper into connecting with the earth itself. Reorienting yourself with the stability of the earth under you. Honoring the space that you're sitting on. All the beings who have sat there or walked there. All of the humans who have stewarded that part of where you are. Honoring them, showing gratitude to them. Deriving power and strength from the earth itself. And from your center now, taking this moment to come more, to bring your awareness more into the present moment, beginning with yourself, or start from your center, become aware of your physical body. No need to judge it, just simply observe, assess what's unfolding in your physical body at this moment. From your center, become aware of your emotional body. What emotions are you present to in this moment? Giving them space, using the breath to create space to allow them to flow without judgment. From your center, become aware of your mental body, your thoughts. What thoughts are you present to in this moment? More, not so much the thoughts, but the quality of the thoughts. Are they spacious and generous, tight and judgmental? Racing like a train or slow? Notice. And maintaining connection with your core is the foundation of this practice, your personal power. Now bring awareness to your heart, to the middle of your chest, where your heart power resides. Compassion, respect, connection, your highest values. From your center and from your heart, become aware of that part of you which has connection with and access to something larger than yourself. And from that part of you, connect in this moment with what is your connection in this moment to something larger than yourself. Could be spiritual, could be humanity, love. And as you connect in this moment, in your heart and your center with that which is larger than yourself, get a sense if you can derive power from that. Not taking power, simply in being in relationship with that power. And allow that sense of the earth flowing power through you and your and that which is larger than yourself and yourself in this moment. Allow that to radiate out to the ends of your own personal space, becoming aware of your own personal boundaries, filling your personal space with this awareness in all directions. And with this awareness of self, take a full breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And with this awareness of self, maintaining that connection with yourself from your center and from your heart, become aware of your surroundings, keeping your eyes closed. The space around you, everything outside of your personal boundaries, in all directions, placing yourself in this context. Considering how your surroundings are influencing you and how you're influencing your surroundings. And with that connection with yourself and your surroundings from your center and from your heart, take a full breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And with this connection with self and surroundings from your center and from your heart, become aware of those in this meditation circle, those who are joining us on the Zoom call, those who might be checking in with us in their own practice around the world. And from your center and from your heart, engaging with those in this meditation circle. And just considering as you do that, the assumptions that come up for you about individuals or the group as a whole. Noticing if those assumptions might be in some way keeping you from a deeper connection or resonance, from an all oneness. No judgment, simply notice. Putting your opinions aside. And always considering how, even if you're not saying anything or doing anything, how you might be impacting those in the circle and how they might be impacting you. Allowing energy to flow and emotions to flow. And with this awareness of self, surroundings, and those in this meditation circle, take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And building on this capacity to hold more in your heart, with staying connected to yourself, your surroundings, and those in this meditation circle, from your center and from your heart, become aware of all human beings. First, beginning with those human beings you would label loved ones. Who arises in your heart? What faces do you see? How many can you hold in your heart at this moment? Considering why you consider them loved ones. What facts do you have to back up that they are loved ones? And what opinions might you be having about them? that might be in some way keeping you from a deeper connection with them. And considering every thought, word, and action you have on some level is impacting them. And every thought, word, and action they're having with you might be impacting you. And from your center and from your heart, become aware of those you would label strangers. Who arises in your heart? What faces do you see, or groups of people? How many can you hold in your heart in this moment? Stretching that heart muscle. Considering the facts you know about them, separate from the opinions you have about them. What assumptions are you making about them? Can you, through your breath or deeper level of connection with your heart, allow those assumptions aside, see them for who they truly are? Considering how even these strangers, they could be a neighbor, they could be someone on the other side of the planet, that every thought, word, or action may be impacting them in some way. And every thought, word, and action might be impacting you in some way. And from your center and from your heart, become aware of those human beings you would label adversary. And today, who arises in your heart? What faces do you see, or groups of people? Be courageous in your honesty with yourself. And what assumptions might you have about them that may not be facts? And what would it be like with a deeper level of breath, or opening, or your heart, connecting with your heart to see if you can let them go in this moment? And considering how every thought, word, or action you have might be impacting them, and every thought, word, or action they have might be impacting you. And imagine that every loved one, stranger, and adversary that you just connected with suddenly have that, if they don't already have it, have that same realization in their hearts. That every thought, word, and action I have can impact others without me even knowing it. And imagine every loved one, every loved one, stranger, and adversary, feeling the deepest, deepest, deepest desire in their heart to make all other beings happy and to alleviate their suffering. You, loved one, strangers, adversaries. Seeing every one of these human beings waking up in the morning with the only desire to alleviate the suffering of others and bringing happiness to others, regardless of whether they see them as loved one, stranger, or adversary. I would say factually, it's physically possible to do it. Holding space for each and every one of us waking up with that realization that it's possible, with a strong desire to actualize it. Imagine all the other creatures on the planet, how they might feel if this were to be true. And imagine the planet itself if this were true. That our new oxygen for our new time is love and compassion. We derive sustenance from love and compassion. just as much as at this moment we derive sustenance from oxygen and food and water. And with that awareness, take a full deep breath in to anchor it in your system. Allow that image that you just generated to flow into your heart as you bring your awareness back to those in this meditation circle. And share that moment with each and every one of us here in your heart, in your core, of what might be possible. That there is no more lack, and that we barter in love and compassion. We sustain ourselves with love and compassion, and we understand there's enough for everyone. With a deep sense of honor and respect for those in this meditation circle, take those in this meditation circle into your heart as you bring your awareness back to your surroundings. And a deep gratitude for the surroundings that you currently have. Allow that to flow into your heart as you bring your awareness back to yourself. Imagine as you connect with yourself from your heart and your core, allowing all your assumptions of yourself to flow away, to see yourself as you authentically are. Saying to yourself, I have the strongest desire for you to be happy and to alleviate your suffering. And receive that. And before we close this practice, allow the effects of this practice to flow into all of your cells, enlivening, enriching all of your cells, seeping into your organs, nurturing and healing and rejuvenating your organs, flowing into your nervous system as a way to remember this, and your brain as muscle memory and new neural pathways or 𝗵𝗶 neural pathways. And as a way to close this practice, let's take one final breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And this is always a critical or an interesting moment to see this transition from being within yourself to slowly opening your eyes and engaging with the world again, looking at the world, so what you have experienced and who you currently are, to remember to walk this into the world. And shake your body and stretch your body. How lovely to suddenly see Paula emerge. Great to see you, Paula.
Happy to be here, if only for a little while.
Yeah, thank you. So we started with our contemplation, and I appreciated the dialogue and the discussion, and I say this to me that is the greatest thing, is to continue to help us sharpen our own viewpoints. So thank you for the things you shared with me to help me sharpen my viewpoints, my message, my words. As Dr. Janet says, the power of words. We got a chance to put it into practice, and now we have a few minutes to reflect. Is there anyone who wants to share how that practice was for you, what came up for you, or continue to discuss what came up in the conversation?
When we did the practice, I realized that a whole lot of things I think about everyone is just an opinion. Nothing more than that. And then I can slip it out of my fingers. And then I have open hands, that's okay.
Open hands, did you say?
Yes, I slip it out of my fingers. I'm not holding anything. I makes me free.
Thank you.
Well, the discussion about facts or opinions made me clear how thin the line is between those two. When you talk about numbers, it looks like facts, but when you read different backgrounds on numbers, you know there are sometimes just opinions.
Do you mean so like we get to choose our facts, right? We choose the facts we
Yeah.
like.
Yes.
I think the piece about recognizing that we're all one and to pull that out of words and thoughts, but into body. Might sound curious, but so I was in the Arboretum the other day in Lilac Land. It was beautiful. We're walking through the Arboretum and there was, like you do, a person with one of those baby Bjorns on with the little baby and the baby Bjorn. And my husband and I got in this like awesome experiment of wouldn't it be a different world if we had like a virtual experience or even a live one. I don't know if I could be that much of a magician, but to have a giant and each one of us could be held in a baby Bjorn as an adult, as a full-size human, and feel the heartbeat and feel arms around the back of our heart and recognize that we are in fact connected, we are held, and that somatic experience could be like a frickin' game changer on the planet. We were really excited about it. I was like, we could make this happen. Anyway.
Let's talk about that.
Mhm. Right? You got goggles on, we just, it would be a virtual game.
I like that idea. I like that idea. I also find that just being out in the forest and putting my feet on the ground and hugging a tree is absolutely a piece of that. When I
Amen.
feel the heartbeat of the tree and I feel it in my body. And I think that the tree therapy stuff that I'm seeing out there where people in other countries are saying, go hang out in the forest when you're struggling with mental health issues is probably one of the sanest things I've heard in forever.
I love that. And remember, it used to be oh, you're a tree hugger. Oh, and there's a lot of judgment in there, right? A lot of opinion in the, oh, you're a tree hugger.
The old tree that used to be on Sentinel Dome in Yosemite, I don't think it's any longer there, but I remember in high school being there and holding that tree and crying and just getting it, that tree had stood there on that tiny, point, looking out over the valley of Yosemite for forever. And I could feel it. It was just intense. And I've never forgotten that.
Thank you. Anyone else? One more? Okay. Well, I would say Dr. Janet's been putting a lot of beautiful Dr. Janet's sayings in the chats. You should take a look at that. She's quite remarkable, and if you don't know her work, you should check it out. Dr. Janet Smith Warfield, Planetary Peace, Power, Prosperity.
I'm just playing with words here in the chat, that's all. But if you shift around your words, you'll shift around your emotions and your actions as well. You get to choose what words your brain is coming up with.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we'll finish with the dedication, but just a couple of announcements. I am doing a 2-hour virtual Fear Civility introduction on June 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's like the next step from the TED Talk of overcoming your chronic niceness. I hope you've seen the TED Talk, TEDx Joe Weston, A Cure for Chronic Niceness. Maybe we should have one of these times we'll just have a discussion about the TEDx talk. That could be fun. But anyway, that's a 2-hour event. You could still sign up. And as you know, we're doing this every month, the Global Heart Gathering. It's great if you can come back. If you know other people who would be interested, please invite them. Are there any other announcements? And you can always check our website, joeweston.com, and go to the events page and see what we're doing with upcoming events. All right, so as always, we start with our motivation, we do our practice, we reflect, and now we get to dedicate the energies. It's quite I always say it's a statistical miracle that these number of people come together. Of the 8 billion people on the planet, these are the ones who show up, and we generate something together that is unique to us. Let's the energy we've dedicated, let's take that and dedicate it to those, as we've talked about, who are struggling, who are trying to find their way, who are feeling disconnected and could use a really big giant hug. Not a giant hug, but a hug from a giant. As well as a giant hug. And that may this practice help them come back to a sense of connection, which could then bring them back to their hearts and help us all in a way to seek out solutions that benefit us all. Okay, thank you. Great to see you. Arrivederci, mi amore. And feel free to get in touch, and see you in a month.
Thank you.
Thank you.